Michigan being in the submarine of sorts. They haven't done any media yet. It's only day 2 of practice, but sometimes you get something, a day before. On Tuesday night, the night before Michigan's first practice, you get the tweet from Sherrone Moore, hashtag I'm locked, GoBlue. And then everyone else added the I'm locked in, hashtag I'm locked in. But a bunch of players, coaches tweeting that. Seems like they've gone dark a little bit. And it reminds you of 2015. We got the video clip here when Michigan went into the submarine for the first time.
Just to let you know, we're going into Submarine tomorrow. And you won't see us for a while. You won't hear from us or see us. We're going to be working. We're going to be in a bunker mentality till we decide we're not.
As a media member, I feel like we're not supposed to like this, but I'm all for a coach in a program doing what they can to maximize their opportunity to win. If it gives you a little bit of an edge to kind of block out distractions or, insulate yourselves and just focus on football improvement, getting better. Not that if you had interviews and they'll have them in the coming days. So it's not like they're going totally dark, but just talking about the mentality with the hashtag I'm locked in, being fully present there, working on football, you can get a lot better in about 30, 31 days when you're just focused on football. They're together all the time. The schedule is insane. I know Jordan Lewis went viral a couple of weeks ago when he tweeted out his fall camp schedule from Michigan when he was there under Harbaugh. So I don't mind this. I like it. I think that feels like this team is focused here, and they're in the submarine. The yellow submarine's the Beatles song. They're in the maize submarine, Anthony.
I'm also a big fan of not, there are some programs where it seems like, our colleagues are in their respective teams' buildings every single day, which don't get me wrong, there's value in that. Would I prefer that to kind of playing the waiting game? Absolutely, I would, because it's good for business. But I think there's also value in not coming out and saying anything or make any sort of statements until there's something to be said. This team just got to practice, just started practicing on Wednesday. I believe they reported Monday and Tuesday for some meetings and kind of maybe some informal sort of stuff. But to my knowledge, they're not in shoulder pads until I think sometime this weekend. So that until you're in pads, like there's nothing to you maybe set a pecking order for how you like your guys to line up once pads do come on, but there's no separation. There's no battles truly being waged until the pads are on and the pads are popping, so to speak. So it's, I'm looking forward to that first time we get to speak to some of these guys, because last few times it was obviously you guys were at Big Ten Media Days. We were at the golf outing and talked to, I think we did the math. We had 22 guys on the set that day. So we've heard everything that there is to be said until something changes. So excited for, a baseline to be set with some of these guys. And maybe it's usually around halfway through camp, you start to see some separation. You start to see maybe some guys that we won't talk about as much until then for some of these position battles that we'll talk about in a bit. But I think in general, when you just kind of check the vibe of this team heading into this season, I'm not going to say that last year's team wasn't focused or wasn't bought in, but there was so much newness. You were coming off a national title. You flipped, the entire coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball. You had a new head coach. You had a new offensive coordinator. You had to replace a coach right before the start of spring ball. There was just a lot of, I think, frenetic stuff going on is the way I would best describe that. Now, outside of really, if you made the change to Chip Lindsey, who has a track record, but outside of a few, front office, so to speak, type of moves, there's continuity here. And last year's team didn't ever lack fight or motivation. But I think something that is a little different this time around is that there's alignment. And I think that the way that they ended last season, you sort of have this proof of concept too, that the way that they were doing things, there was gold to be mined at the end of some of the rough stuff that they went through. And they got better this offseason. They got better on offense. How much better, we'll find out. But You revamped your offense. You have, an exciting quarterback room, which is the antithesis of what last year's was. On defense, you have guys that are stepping into bigger roles, and you added guys in the portal that'll be a factor here. It just feels like all boats are sailing the same direction. And there's physically, these guys changed their bodies this offseason. It seemed like there was much more of an emphasis, and Sherrone Moore had said this at the end of the year. They want to get more physical. They want to be a little more imposing at the point of attack. And it just seems like they got the work in this offseason they wanted to get in, and that set themselves up for whatever this fall camp winds up being.
And I remember saying it last year at the time, but the Fresno State and Texas portion of last season, it kind of felt like that was a team that was maybe halfway or 2/3 of the way through fall camp and not already in the season. They didn't have a starting quarterback until a few days before the first game. It just felt a little bit behind. So I think maybe trying to accelerate that a little bit. And to your point, not in pads yet. So as you mentioned, there's not a ton to talk about anyway. Right now, setting the foundation for what the rest of the camp is going to be like. You're trying to be crisp and work on fundamentals without the pads. You can do a lot of that stuff, but until it's not really football until you're in the pads, that'll come in the coming days. And as you said, track who you hear about, track who you don't hear about as much. Maybe a guy's banged up, maybe a guy is getting passed up. So there's still a lot you can kind of glean once you get into camp. But right now, looks like so far they're in the submarine, and they'll surface. They'll come up for air whenever they decide to, as Jim Harbaugh said back in 2015, and as Sherrone Moore has the license to control here in 2025.